The rain hammered against Maya's helmet as she gripped the handlebars of her delivery bike, weaving through the glittering downtown streets where people who'd never worried about rent hurried between restaurants that cost more than her monthly income. Her phone buzzed with the notification she'd been dreading all week: another late fee on her mother's medication. She had exactly $47 in her account and 3 more deliveries before her shift ended at midnight. The app pinged. New order. Her heart sank when she saw the address: 1847 Ridgecrest Manor, the Ridge Estate. Everyone in the city knew about the Ridge. It was where old money went to hide from new money, where security gates had security gates, and where delivery drivers were treated like they might steal the silverware if you blinked. Maya had been there twice before. Both times, she'd been handed a tip through a crack in the door like she was contaminated. She picked up the order from Chen's Palace, their most expensive sushi platter, and started the 20-minute climb up the hill. By the time she reached the estate's outer gate, her legs were burning and her jacket was soaked through. The guard barely looked at her before waving her toward the service entrance. Of course, God forbid she use the same driveway as actual people. But when she rounded the circular driveway, a man in an expensive suit was standing at the main entrance, phone pressed to his ear, gesturing wildly. He looked like he was about to throw the phone. Maya hesitated, then figured she'd try the front door. Worst case, she'd get redirected. Best case, she'd save 5 minutes and get home before her mother took her evening pills alone. She climbed the marble steps, each one probably worth more than her entire apartment, and pressed the doorbell. Nothing. The man was still shouting into his phone, something about market shares and quarterly reports. Maya tried the handle, unlocked. She pushed it open just enough to call inside. Delivery from Chen's Palace. No answer. She could hear classical music playing somewhere deep in the house. She stepped into the foyer and immediately felt like she'd entered a museum. Everything was white marble and gold accents, with paintings that looked old enough to be in textbooks. A chandelier hung overhead that probably required its own insurance policy. She set the bag on the entrance table and was about to leave when something caught her eye. Among the gallery of expensive frames on the wall, there was one that didn't belong. It was small, wooden, cracked along one corner, and looked like it had been bought at a thrift store. The photo inside showed a young woman, maybe 25, with dark hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, wearing a plain dress and an apron. She was holding a toddler, maybe 2 years old, and they were both laughing at something outside the frame. The woman's face was familiar in a way that made Maya's stomach drop. She stepped closer. The woman had the same nose, the same slight gap between her front teeth, the same beauty mark just above her left eyebrow. Maya pulled out her phone and opened her photos. She scrolled back months until she found it, the picture her mother kept on their kitchen counter in an identical cracked wooden frame. Same pose, same smile, same child. But in her mother's version, the woman's face had been carefully cut out, leaving just the outline of her head and the laughing toddler. "What are you doing in my house?" Maya spun around. The man from outside stood in the doorway, phone forgotten in his hand. He was younger than she'd thought, maybe 40, with gray at his temples and eyes that had probably never known what it felt like to check a bank balance before buying groceries. His face had gone completely pale. "I'm just delivering your food," Maya said, holding up her empty hands. "The door was open. I called out. I was just leaving." But his eyes had locked onto the frame she'd been looking at. He crossed the foyer in 3 long strides and positioned himself between Maya and the photo like he was protecting it from her. "Why were you looking at that?" His voice was tight, controlled in a way that suggested he was anything but. "Because that's my mother," Maya said. The words came out before she could stop them. "That's my mom in that picture. Why do you have a photo of my mother in your house?" The man's jaw tightened. For a moment she thought he might deny it, throw her out, call security. Instead, he reached for his wallet with shaking hands and pulled out a stack of bills. He didn't count them. "I need you to forget you saw that. Here, take this. Consider it a tip for excellent service." Maya looked down at the money he was trying to hand her, all hundreds. She counted at least 10 of them. $1,000, more than she made in 2 weeks of deliveries. Her mother's medication for 3 months, the overdue rent, the broken bike chain she'd been meaning to fix since October. "Why would you pay me $1,000 to forget a photograph?" Maya asked, not taking the money. "Because I'm asking you to, because it's none of your concern, because that woman is not your mother." But his hand was shaking so badly the bills fluttered. "Her name is Alina Ruiz. She's 52 years old. She has diabetes and chronic kidney disease. She worked as a housekeeper for 20 years before she got too sick to work. She lives at 447 Maple Street apartment. She's my mother, and I want to know why you have her picture in your house." The man's face crumpled. For just a second, the billionaire mask slipped and Maya saw something raw underneath. Grief, maybe, or fear. He shoved the money toward her again. "Please just take this and go. Don't come back here. Don't tell anyone about this. Forget you saw anything." Maya's hands closed around the bills before her brain could catch up. $1,000. Her mother's panicked voice echoed in her head from that morning. "We'll figure it out, Mija. We always do." But they were running out of things to figure out. The eviction notice was final. The medication couldn't wait. She took the money. The ride home was a blur. Maya's hands were still shaking when she unlocked the apartment door. Her mother was asleep on the couch, the TV playing some telenovela on mute. Alina looked smaller every day, like she was slowly disappearing into the cushions. Maya pulled a blanket over her and went to her own room. She couldn't sleep. She kept seeing that photo, kept seeing the man's face when he recognized her. At 3 in the morning, she gave up and started searching through the boxes in her closet. Her mother had always been a pack rat, keeping everything from Maya's kindergarten drawings to expired coupons. If that photo existed, if it was real, there had to be something else. She found it in an old shoebox under her mother's winter coats. The matching frame, just as cracked, just as cheap. But the photo inside had been destroyed. Someone had carefully cut out the woman's face, leaving just the laughing toddler and an empty space where a mother should be. On the back, in her mother's handwriting, "My boy, my sweet boy, I'm so sorry." Maya's hands went cold. My boy, not my daughter, not Maya. Her mother had another child, a son she'd never mentioned in 23 years. She waited until morning, until her mother was awake and had taken her pills. Alina was making coffee with shaking hands when Maya set both frames on the kitchen table. The one from the mansion, taken with her phone. The one from the closet with its gutted photograph. Alina's coffee cup slipped from her fingers. It shattered on the linoleum. "Where did you get that?" Her voice was barely a whisper. "The one on the left, from a mansion on the ridge, from a billionaire who paid me $1,000 to forget I saw it." Maya pulled the stack of bills from her pocket and set it next to the frames. "The one on the right, from your closet. Want to tell me why you never mentioned you had a son? Want to tell me why his photo is in Silas Thorne's house?" Her mother's face had gone gray. She reached for the table to steady herself, and Maya jumped up to help her into a chair. Alina was breathing hard, her eyes fixed on the money like it was a snake. "You have to give it back," Alina said. "You have to stay away from that house. You have to promise me, Maya. Promise me you'll never go back there." "Mom, what's going on? Who is that child? Why does Silas Thorne have your picture?" "Promise me first." No, I'm not promising anything until you tell me the truth. I'm 23 years old and I just found out I apparently have a brother you never told me about. I think I deserve some answers." Alina closed her eyes. When she opened them again, tears were streaming down her face. "You don't have a brother, not anymore. He's gone. He's been gone for over 20 years, and it's my fault." The story came out in pieces, like Alina was pulling up shards of glass with her bare hands. 25 years ago, she'd worked as a kitchen maid for the Thorne family. They were old money, real estate and shipping, the kind of wealth that had its own Wikipedia page. She was 19, desperate for work, sending money back to her family in Guatemala. The Thorns had one biological son, Marcus, the golden child who was supposed to inherit everything. But Marcus had problems. Drug problems, gambling problems, debt problems. And when he disappeared one night after a particularly bad bender, the family panicked. Not because they loved him, but because without an heir, the family fortune would be carved up by distant cousins and business partners. They needed Marcus, or at least they needed someone who could play the part. That's when they found Silas, a toddler from a group home, maybe 2 years old, close enough in age to Marcus's last public appearance. Alina had been working late one night when she'd overheard the plan. They were going to pass this child off as Marcus, raise him as the heir, and no one would know the difference. The real Marcus was probably dead in a ditch somewhere, his body feeding rats while his replacement learned which fork to use. I couldn't let them do it, Alina said, her voice breaking. He was just a baby. They were going to use him, shape him into someone else, and when he outlived his usefulness or figured out the truth, what then? I'd heard the stories about the Thorns. People who crossed them didn't just lose their jobs, they disappeared. So Alina had made a plan. She saved every penny for 6 months. She contacted an old friend who ran a church charity in Arizona. And one night when the family was at some gala, she'd taken the child and run. She'd bought bus tickets with cash, no trail, and left him with the church. They'd promised to find him a good family, people who'd love him, people who had no idea who the Thorns were or what he'd been saved from. I thought he'd be safe, Alina said. I thought I'd done the right thing, but the Thorns put out a story that I'd kidnapped the heir and demanded ransom. They had connections everywhere. Police, judges, immigration. They blacklisted me from every legitimate job in the state. I had to use a fake name for years. I had to leave you with your grandmother while I worked 3 jobs under the table just to send money home. By the time the heat died down, you were 5 years old and barely knew who I was. Maya felt like the floor had dropped out from under her. All those years when her mother was gone, when it was just her and Abuela, when she'd felt abandoned and angry and alone. Her mother had been in hiding. Her mother had saved a child's life and lost everything. But if you gave him to a church in Arizona, why is his photo in Silas Thorne's house? Maya asked. Alina shook her head. I don't know, I never knew what happened to him after that. I couldn't risk trying to find out. Maybe the church was compromised. Maybe the Thorns found him anyway. Maybe Silas Thorne bought him from whatever family took him in. These people, Maya, they don't follow the same rules as us. They don't lose. They just destroy anyone who tries to make them lose. Maya looked at the $1,000 on the table. Hush money, guilt money, blood money. Her mother had sacrificed everything to save a child, and that child had grown up to become exactly what the Thorns had wanted anyway. A billionaire, an heir, a man who'd pay $1,000 to make problems disappear. I'm going back, Maya said. No, absolutely not. Mom, he knows something. He recognized you in that photo. He got scared, really scared, when I asked about you. If he's really the kid you saved, he deserves to know the truth. And if he's not, if he's just some Thorn playing games, then he needs to know that you're alive and you're not going to be scared anymore. Alina grabbed Maya's hand. Her grip was weak but desperate. Please, Mija, please don't do this. They'll hurt you. They'll hurt both of us. They've already hurt us, Mom. Look at where we live. Look at your health. Look at what they did to your life. I'm not scared of them. But Maya's voice shook when she said it because she was absolutely terrified. She went back the next day. Not as a delivery driver this time, she'd quit that job with a text message at dawn, but as someone with questions that deserved answers. The security guard at the gate tried to turn her away, but she held up her phone with the photo of Alina on the screen and said she needed to speak with Mr. Thorne about a personal matter. The guard made a call. 5 minutes later, the gate opened. Silas Thorne met her at the door himself this time. He looked like he hadn't slept. His shirt was wrinkled, his eyes were red, and he'd apparently fired his entire staff because the house was empty. I asked you not to come back, he said. And I'm asking you to tell me the truth. Are you the child my mother took from this house 25 years ago?" He stepped aside. "You should come in." The house felt different in daylight, less like a museum and more like a mausoleum. Everything was too perfect, too staged, like a showroom where no one actually lived. Silas led her to a study lined with books that had probably never been read and poured himself a drink from a crystal decanter. He didn't offer her one. "Your mother's name is Alina Ruiz," he said. It wasn't a question. "Yes. She worked here as a kitchen maid in 1999 and 2000. Yes. She saved my life." Maya felt something shift in her chest. "So it's true, you're the child she took." "No," Silas downed his drink and poured another. "I'm the child she left behind." The story he told was different from her mother, but it fit together like broken pieces of the same glass. Yes, Marcus Thorne had disappeared. Yes, a toddler had been brought to the house to replace him. But there had been two children, twins, both from the same group home, both the right age, both with no family who'd come looking. The Thornes had planned to raise them together, see which one was smarter, more charming, more malleable. The winner would become the heir. The loser would be eliminated, probably sent away or worse. Alina had only taken one. She'd run out of time, out of courage, or maybe she'd only been able to afford one bus ticket. Silas didn't know. He just knew that one morning his brother was gone and he was alone, and the Thornes had decided he was enough. They poured everything into him. Private tutors, therapy to forget his past, a new identity. By the time he was 10, he'd convinced himself the brother was a dream. By 20, he'd built an empire. By 40, he was one of the richest men in the state. "But I kept the photo," Silas said, gesturing to the cracked frame. "It was the only thing I took from the group home. The worker there said a woman had dropped us off with just that picture and $20. I didn't remember who the woman was. The Thornes told me my birth mother had abandoned me, that I was lucky they'd chosen me. But I kept that photo because it was the only proof that someone somewhere had held me like I mattered, like I was loved." "My mother didn't abandon you," Maya said. "She thought she was saving you, both of you. She didn't have enough money to take you both, so she chose one and hoped she could come back for you. But the Thornes made sure she could never come back. They destroyed her life." Silas's hands were shaking again. "I need you to understand something. I've spent 40 years trying to figure out who I really am. Am I Silas Thorne, the billionaire? Am I whoever I was before, the kid from the group home? Am I my brother, the one who got away? I've built this entire life on a lie, and the only true thing I had was that photo. The proof that I existed before all of this. And now you're telling me the woman in that picture is alive, and she's sick, and she's been suffering for 25 years because of me. Not because of you, because of them." Maya pointed at the gallery of Thorne family portraits on the wall. Stern faces, old money, people who thought other humans were just game pieces. "My mother made a choice. It cost her everything, but it was her choice. You didn't ask for any of this. Neither did my brother, the one she saved. Do you know what happened to him?" Maya shook her head. "She gave him to a church in Arizona. That's all she knows." Silas walked to his desk and opened a drawer. He pulled out a worn folder, the kind that had been handled thousands of times. Inside were documents, adoption records, private investigator reports, dead ends, and cold trails. He'd been looking for his brother for 15 years. "I found the church," Silas said. "It burned down in 2003. All the records were destroyed. The woman who ran it died a year later. I've hired every investigator, every expert, every person who claimed they could find someone who didn't want to be found. Nothing. He could be anyone. He could be the guy who sold me coffee this morning. He could be dead. I don't know, and I'm running out of time to find out." "Why are you running out of time?" Silas's laugh was bitter. "Because the board of directors is starting to ask questions about my past. Because one of the old Thorne cousins has been digging around, trying to prove I'm not legitimate. Because if the truth comes out, that I'm not Marcus Thorne, that I'm just some kid they pulled from a group home, I lose everything. The company, the money, the name. All of it goes to whoever can prove they have real Thorn blood. And there are a lot of very motivated people trying to do exactly that. So what? You're just going to live this lie forever. You're going to keep pretending to be someone you're not. What choice do I have? Silas's voice rose. If I come clean, I destroy my brother's chance at a normal life. If he's out there, if he's happy, if he doesn't know any of this, then me confessing means the Thorns will find him too. They'll drag him into this nightmare. Is that what your mother wanted? Is that what she sacrificed everything for? Maya didn't have an answer. She thought about her mother, working under fake names, always looking over her shoulder, living in the cheapest apartments and driving the oldest cars because she was terrified the Thorns would find her. All of that fear, all of that sacrifice, just so a child she'd never seen again could be free. My mother is dying, Maya said quietly. The kidney disease is getting worse. She needs a transplant, but she's not high enough on the list and we can't afford private care. She's got maybe 2 years left if we're lucky. And every day she carries the guilt of leaving you behind. Every day she wonders if she did the right thing. Don't you think she deserves to know that you're okay? That you survived? Silas set down his glass. If I meet her, if people find out she's alive, they'll put the pieces together. They'll realize she's the woman who kidnapped Marcus Thorn. They'll come after both of you. They're already coming after us. We live in a one-bedroom apartment with mold in the walls. She's rationing insulin because we can't afford the full prescription. We're already at the bottom, Mr. Thorn. We've got nothing left to lose. He looked at her for a long moment. Then he picked up his phone and made a call. Dr. Morrison, it's Silas Thorn. I need you to arrange a private consultation for a kidney transplant patient. Cost is not a factor. Yes, I'll send over the details. Today, thank you. He hung up and turned to Maya. Give me your mother's information. I'll have my lawyers draw up an anonymous medical trust. She'll get the care she needs, but I can't meet her. Not yet. Not until I figure out how to protect all of us. That's not enough, Maya said. She doesn't want your money. She wants to know that the sacrifice meant something. She wants to see you, to know you're real, to know you're okay. You owe her that much. I owe her everything. That's why I'm trying to keep her safe. Safe? Maya's voice hardened. She's dying, Mr. Thorn. Safe doesn't matter anymore. What matters is that she gets to see just once that the child she saved grew up to be a good man. Can you give her that? Or are you too busy being Silas Thorn, billionaire, to remember that you're also the boy in that photograph? The words hung in the air between them. Silas looked at the cracked frame on the wall, at the woman smiling at a camera 25 years ago, at the proof that he'd once been loved before he became a commodity. Tomorrow, he said finally. Tell me where she is and I'll come tomorrow. No security, no staff, no lawyers, just me. But Maya, you need to understand something. If this goes wrong, if people find out, we're all going to pay the price. Are you sure this is what you want? Maya thought about her mother's face when she talked about that night, the guilt and the grief and the constant wondering. She thought about the $1,000 in hush money sitting on their kitchen table. She thought about all the years her mother had spent hiding, sacrificing, bleeding herself dry, so a stranger's child could be free. Yes, Maya said, I'm sure. The next evening, a black car pulled up outside their apartment building. Not a limo, not a town car, just a regular sedan that could belong to anyone. Silas Thorn climbed out wearing jeans and a jacket that looked like it had actually been worn before. He looked nervous. He looked young. He looked like a kid about to meet his mother for the first time. Alina was sitting by the window when Maya let him in. She insisted on wearing her good dress, the one she saved for church, even though it hung loose on her shrinking frame. When she saw Silas, her hands flew to her mouth. You, she whispered, oh my God, you're real. Ms. Ruiz, Silas started, but Alina was already standing, already crossing the small living room, already reaching for him with shaking hands. You're alive, you're okay. Oh, Mijo, I thought they'd hurt you. I thought I'd left you in hell. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Silas stood frozen as Alina wrapped her arms around him. Then, slowly, his own arms came up. He held her like she might disappear. He held her like he was the child in that photograph again, being held by someone who thought he mattered. "You saved me," he said into her hair. "You saved my brother. You lost everything to save us." "Not everything." Alina pulled back to look at him, tears streaming down her face. "I got to live. I got to have Maya. I got to know that maybe somewhere you were both okay. That was enough." "It shouldn't have been enough. You should have had a life. You should have had everything." "I had the important things, Mijo. I just wish I could have saved you both." The words broke something in Silas. He sank into the worn couch and put his head in his hands. "I've been looking for him for 15 years. Every lead goes nowhere. It's like he vanished." Alina sat beside him and took his hand. "Then maybe he's exactly where he should be. Maybe he got the life I wanted for both of you. A normal life with a family who loves him, who doesn't know anything about the thorns or their poison. Isn't that what we wanted? For you both to be free." "But I'm not free." Silas looked at her with red-rimmed eyes. "I'm trapped in this lie. I'm Silas Thorne, heir to a fortune built on other people's suffering, and I don't know how to stop being him without destroying everything, including the people I care about." Maya had been standing by the door, giving them space, but now she stepped forward. "What if you didn't have to choose? What if there was a way to use the Thorne money for something good, something that would make the sacrifice worth it?" Both of them looked at her, Alina with hope, Silas with exhaustion. "I'm listening," Silas said. Over the next hour they talked. Really talked. Alina told him everything about that night, the fear, the desperation, the awful choice between two children when she only had resources for one. Silas told her about growing up Thorne, the loneliness, the constant performance, the feeling that he was always one mistake away from being discarded. Maya told them both about the delivery routes through the city, the families living in cars, the kids who came to school hungry, the system that kept people trapped. By the time the sun set, they had a plan. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't safe, but it was something. 3 months later, the Thorne Foundation announced a new initiative, a fund for families affected by the child welfare system, providing housing, medical care, and education to kids aging out of foster care. The initial endowment was $50 million. The fund was named the Alina Ruiz Foundation, and the woman herself appeared at the press conference, standing beside Silas Thorne as he explained that she once saved his life, and now he was trying to pay it forward. The board of directors had questions. The old Thorne cousins screamed foul. Private investigators started circling, but Silas had his lawyers ready, his story straight, and a network of people who owed him favors. He acknowledged that he'd been adopted, that he wasn't a biological Thorne, but that he'd been legally recognized as the heir and had built the company into something far more profitable than it had ever been. He dared them to try to take it away. They tried. For 6 months it was a war. Lawsuits, accusations, media circuses. But Silas had something the old guard didn't: public support. The story of the housekeeper who'd saved a child and lost everything, and the billionaire who'd spent decades trying to repay that debt, captured people's imagination. Donations poured into the foundation. Other companies started similar programs. The Thorne name, which had always been associated with old money and closed doors, suddenly meant something different. And through it all, Maya watched her mother smile more than she had in years. Alina got her transplant, funded by the foundation, and her color came back. She started volunteering at the foundation's office, talking to kids who reminded her of the two toddlers she tried to save so long ago. She was still scared sometimes, still looked over her shoulder, but she was also alive in a way Maya hadn't seen before. The brother, the other twin, was never found. Silas kept looking, kept hopping, but as the years passed, he started to make peace with the idea that maybe Maya's mother had been right. Maybe that boy had gotten the normal life, the safe life, the free life. Maybe he was a teacher or a mechanic or a father who'd never know he'd been born into a nightmare and saved by a 19-year-old housekeeper with nothing but courage and a bus ticket. Or maybe one day he'd see the news about the Elena Ruiz Foundation and something would click. Maybe he'd recognize the woman in the photograph, the one holding two bobbies like they were the most precious things in the world. Maybe he'd come forward. Maybe he wouldn't. But the foundation would be there either way. A testament to the idea that one person's sacrifice could ripple forward, that courage mattered, that even when the system was designed to crush you, you could still choose to be good. Maya quit delivery work and went back to school, studying social work with a full scholarship from the foundation. She thought about that night in the mansion all the time, about the cracked wooden frame and the moment everything changed. Her mother had spent 25 years believing she'd failed, that saving one child while leaving another behind made her a coward. But Maya saw it differently now. Her mother had done the impossible with nothing but love and desperation. That was bravery. That was everything. If you've made it this far, thank you for watching this story. Sometimes the people who sacrifice the most are the ones the world never sees, but their courage changes everything. Hit that subscribe button if you want more stories like this. Drop a comment telling me what choice you would have made in Alina's position, and smash that like button if you believe one person can make a difference. Because they can. Because she did. Because maybe you will too.